Hello and welcome to the Coach Dave Academy lap guide for the SimLab Production Car Challenge week number 2 in the Mazda MX-5. My name is William Chadwick and we're going to go through a quick hot lap and then a guide across your pointers for the lap for this week's lap guide.
You just hit the fastest lap.
So, you've just seen the hot lap, and here we're going to do a little bit of an analysis for the hot lap. So, as you can see here, we're on the start-finish straight of Laguna Seca. Really important to keep to the left-hand side. Make that distance as short as possible. We don't want to be like sitting the car here in the middle of the road, giving away free lap time. So, nice and close on the inside there as we head down towards turn number 1. One thing that's important is you don't get an off track for using this space. I'm pretty sure it's 4 wheels off, so you can use this to open up the entry of your corner and just make it a bit of a wider corner, shallower. You can carry more minimum speed and it'll really help you on your lap times. So as we go into the braking, you can see you don't need to be afraid of hitting the ABS at all. In this car, it's not something that you need to worry about for tyre overheating or anything like that, so you can smash the ABS if you need to. Just control that brake pressure and use a general bleed off like we always do with trail braking. Important to think about just not overstressing the tyre at entry because this car is really sensitive on the balance, and the more you turn, the more speed you scrub off. So you're really kind of trying to use minimal steering inputs at all times. Very unique to this car, blipping down every gear. Making sure we do this is really, really important to get a good down change and for the car to do as good as possible for you. As you can see, a little bit of counter steer on that entry. Very, very important to use the curbs here at Laguna Seca. These flat curbs, ignore the red ones a little bit for most corners. These flat curbs are so usable and you can pretty much treat them as another extension of your track. You can almost treat it as that is the track surface. So it's really important to use these. On entry here, as you can see, we get the car turning. Nice shallow line. This keeps the car nice and stable. And we don't even use a bit of brake here after the apex. We just kind of just make sure it turns in, get on the power, and just try and dance it out to the exit here. Again, using all of that curb on the inside here and also on the outside, just making this corner as wide as physically possible for us. Head down towards turn number 3, or technically turn number 2 if you were asking me. But we use, again, a lot of the track limits, a lot of the curbage on the outside. It's basically just like track surface, as we've already talked about. Get nicely to the inside. Ideally, you would be able to get a little bit more than that, but that's not always the case. Very important to what you see here is we're not using too much brake because the car, when you get your foot on the brake, rear goes pretty light. And you're going to be dancing a little bit, so you don't want to use too much of the brake and dive that nose too much. The way this car is set up, me and Mikhail did, where the setup pack that you can go and get is that it's quite edgy, it's quite on the edge, so it's really, really good for speed. But you need to just be careful because, especially on cold tyres, the car's going to be pretty loose at the rear. Ideally, like I said, we would be over here and we would be able to cut this properly as much as possible. We'll have a little look like how that looks from the cockpit view as well. So as you can see, just making sure nicely done. Again, another track ends here, but we're using all of this curbage, as you can see, right up to the edge there, cutting back in and then opening it up again, really maximizing this, because the shallower we can make that corner, the higher minimum speed, and that is your key to lap time. Another point to just touch on the exit here, you'll notice in a lot of corners we're aiming to get to the throttle as soon as possible, and that is crucial for your lap time in this car, so remember to do that. Getting through here, very small amount of brake actually, almost negligible from me, more of just a lift. As soon as we get to that apex, using that curb again, really back on the power aggressively, and using this exit. You can dip a wheel here in the sort of dirt, you would say, but if you are too far off, it's about half a car off, as you exit this curb you will get an off track, so just be wary of that. So just be aware of that, because don't want to be getting too many off tracks. Here, really important to not be too lackadaisical and just like go too wide here. Cut it nice and tight. There's no reason not to. Gains you free lap time. And then again on entry, using all that curb like we've talked about across here at Laguna Seca. Again, not too much brake, balancing the car, attacking that curb. We can even attack a little bit of the dirt here, although not necessary really. But as you can see as well, something to mention. If we I'll use the far chase just to get a better angle of this, and it doesn't mess up our normal camera. If we lower it down a bit, you can see that the car kind of, it's a bit cambered. So we really want to get to this inside so we can use it nicely. Zoom that in a little bit. We'll pull that a bit closer. As you can see, the camber of the corner really helps you get in and get through the corner. Again, on exit here, all of that track again. Common theme, like we talk about. And as we head down towards turn number 6, again, a little bit of a dab of the brake. I kind of use it just to get the nose in and then back on the power, balancing it. If you get this perfect, you're almost completely flat. Be careful not to hit this red curb because it's just game over. And really, the speed that I carry here is really good, but the only issue I have is because I'm not quite to that curb. We do just run a little bit wide in the exit, but this is only costing you maybe half a tenth, and it's much more beneficial to push it through this corner and carry that speed than being constantly too pessimistic with the speed that you carry and not running wide, because what we lose here we're more than gaining by having a really high minimum speed. As we head down towards our world famous corkscrew corner, the corner that everyone talks about when we get to Laguna Seca, I feel like the braking zone here is a lot harder, so you're pressing the pedal a lot harder because we're travelling more in a straight line, and like we can see here, using the maximum amount of track possible just to open it up. As you can see, braking in a straight line. As we start to pitch it in, first gear, cut this a little bit. If you go, I think, half a car here, you get an off track, so be careful with that. Same as we fall down the hill, if you're cutting too much of this inside, going to get an off track as well. You can use that and carry a little bit more speed, but just be aware that their off tracks are there. Again, we come into the final latter section of the lap, in towards like the last turns, turn 9, turn 10, turn 11. A lot of people, I feel like, emphasize going out really wide here. I don't think it's worth it. It's much more important to make sure you're making this apex. If you're not making this apex, again, another one of those camber situations, a lot of camber in the racetrack here. If you're out here, you're going to be just falling off and off and off, and you're going to lose a lot of lap time. And not really needing to use the exit here with the speed that you carry, just making sure that before turn 10, we're across to this side, again, using the curb, using the camber nicely to the throttle, use the exit, and then we come into the final corner, braking hard. One thing small mistake I make here, you don't want this red curb. What it tends to do is just slip that rear up a little bit, and just, although it looks pretty okay, we're losing half a tenth here, and especially you see, looking at the correction that I make on the landing, that's just going to cost us a bit of speed, and it's just that time where we're not really accelerating fully. So for proper good corner. You're basically taking this line, but we're just avoiding that red curb. So that's a small mistake from me, which costs us about half a tenth to a tenth of a second. As we come to the line, again, revving the car out, you know, you really want to be on the top end of the rev, not necessarily just when it starts to flash. Top end of about 7.4 you can change, and that should gain you a little bit of time. Run to the line, make that line as smooth and as sharp as possible to end up here, and that will be a lap of Laguna Seca in the Mazda MX-5. Well, that is going to be it for this week's lap guide in the Mazda MX-5. Remember, you've got to use those curbs really nicely and make sure you're really getting the balance of the car, not turning the car too much. But I hope you've enjoyed this lap guide from myself, William Chadwick, here at the Coach Dave Academy. And remember that you can find the Discord links in the description below. Subscribe for any more of these lap guides in the future. And I hope to see you coming back for the further weeks.